Gauranga Maya Pashashi Ki Jai. Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita Ki Jai. So reading from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, Volume 6, Uniting Two Worlds. So here we are. And this chapter is entitled Chant Hare Krishna and Fight. Oh yes, Prabhupada replied. Rameshwara asked how the devotees could accomplish such a huge ambitious project. So the question Rameshwara asked was, should we be thinking in our minds that one day the Krishna consciousness movement will have to manage the cities and the nations of the world? Rameshwara asked how the devotees could accomplish such a huge ambitious project. The management would be simplified, Prabhupada explained, since the citizens would live a pure natural life, thus the burdensome, sinful aspects of godless government would become unnecessary, and so many complex problems would be solved. He gave the example of self-sufficient agrarian communities where men earn their livelihood locally, but only by education and by experiencing the higher taste of Krishna conscious pleasure, he said, could the masses become satisfied with simple living. Rameshwara asked if America would become Krishna conscious by a minority of Krishna conscious persons becoming powerful in government while the masses remained as karmis. No, Prabhupada replied, you can introduce Krishna consciousness in such a way that they will become devotees. Suppose in a big factory we shall introduce this prasadam distribution and chanting. They will immediately become devotees. Their hearts will be cleansed. Chaitadavanavanjanam. But will it be like Russia, pursued Rameshwara, where there is only a small group of people who are in control? No, it is not like that, Prabhupada said. The quality of the people will be changed. So that means only when the whole mass of population becomes Krishna conscious, Rameshwara suggested, then there will be Krishna conscious government? No, Prabhupada corrected. You can have government when you are in a minority, but the mass of people, on account of this quality, they have to see the example. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhaktarinda. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhaktarinda. So we're reading from Chaitanya, Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, and it is chapter 17, text 150. Yamuna, Dekhiya, Preme, Hade.
This one doesn't have a purport.
It's okay. Jampa, Diya, Yamuna Dekhiya, Preme Pade, Jampa Diya. Aste, Vyaste, Bhattacharya, Utaya, Dariya. Aste Vyaste Bhattacharya Utaya Dariya. Yamuna Dekhiya Preme Pade Jampadiya. Aste Vyaste Bhattacharya Utaya Dariya. Yamuna Dekhiya Preme Pade Jampadiya. Aste Vyaste Bhattacharya Utaya Dariya.
Aste Vyaste Bhattacharya Utaya Dariya.
Mataji's. Yamuna, the river Jamuna. Dekhiya, seeing. Preme, in ecstatic love. Pade, falls down. Jampadiya, jumping. Ashtavyasti, in great haste. Bhattacharya, Balabhadra Bhattacharya. Utaya, raises. Dadiya, catching. Translation. As soon as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw the river Jamuna, he threw himself into it. Balabhadra Bhattacharya hastily caught the Lord and very carefully raised him up again. So I'll just read the next few texts. The Lord stayed at Prayag for 3 days. He delivered the whole name of Krishna, the holy name of Krishna, and ecstatic love. Thus he delivered many people. Wherever the Lord stopped to rest on the way to Mathura, he delivered the holy name of Krishna and ecstatic love of Krishna. Thus he made the people dance. When the Lord toured South India, he delivered many people, and when he travelled in the western sector, he similarly converted many people to the Vaishnavas. So please repeat after me. When the Lord toured South India, he delivered many people. And when he travelled in the western sector, he similarly converted many people to Vaishnavism. Prabhupada ki jai. Formerly, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu converted people when he toured southern and western India. Similarly, the Hare Krishna movement is now delivering the people of the western world wherever devotees are chanting the holy names. This is all being done by the Lord's mercy. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu predicted that he would deliver people in every city and village of the world by giving them a chance to chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Om Jnana-timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhaktarinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapatam Yen Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swabadantikam. Ma Vishnu Vada Krishna Vishnu Vitale Shamati Shri Ram Swami Tirama Glories to Shri So, Lord Chaitanya is, it's interesting, Srila Prabhupada says in the purport that that the international society, the Hare Krishna movement, is now delivering the people of the Western world wherever devotees are chanting the holy names. This is all being done by the Lord's mercy. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu predicted that he would deliver people in every city and village of the world by giving them a chance to chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. So, because when we say deliver, that can mean a lot of things. Certainly, if a person says Hare Krishna once, he's delivered from all his karma for that lifetime. Whether he'll go back to Godhead in that lifetime, but certainly he's delivered in one sense. So there's different levels of being delivered. An interesting Prabhupada memory, Narayan was saying that they were in the Srila Prabhupada was in the next room speaking to Allen Ginsberg, and the devotees were in the cupboard next door with their ears up against the wall, listening. And And Allen Ginsberg was saying, it seems like it's going to get very heavy at the end of Kali Yuga. What will your disciples do? And Srila Prabhupada said in a startled way, all my disciples will be back to Godhead by that time. So sometimes the spiritual master will be very strict and very severe to keep the disciples safe. But then on the other side, Srila Prabhupada is saying, if you just hold on to my dhoti, I'll take you in through the back door. So you have, you could have like three sections of Krishna conscious statements. The ones that make it sound impossible, the ones that make it sound possibly achievable, and the ones that make it sound really easy. So you can have these three columns, and you can put all the statements in. So if you just take one of the statements that make it seem practically impossible on its own, it's kind of out of context with all the different things that Prabhupada said in his letters, and maybe Sachari is what they're saying as well. So to chasten a disciple, sometimes the spiritual master will be very severe and he'll say something. But on the other hand, and that's what's interesting about the when we say the translation, we say Srila Prabhupada is the friend of the poor, he's the ocean of mercy, and he's the Lord and Master of the devotees. So the spiritual master is especially strict with his disciples because he especially wants to make sure that they're okay. But for the general people, he's their friend and he wants to help them. And he's not asking very much in return, Just hear the holy name, take some prasadam, see Jagannath Rath Yatra, and be delivered and be at least freed from all the suffering and karma that you were due, and come back next lifetime with a fresh slate and start off from there. So the more intimate and confidential it becomes with the spiritual master, then the more also strict and sometimes severe he is. But that's also his mercy. Lord and Master. He is the Lord and Master of the devotees. Ocean of mercy. He is the friend of the poor. So Srila Prabhupada he quite often groups, when he's talking about Lord Chaitanya, like he talks about the Chaitanya tree, and then he'll quite often group the International Society for Krishna Consciousness in amongst Lord Chaitanya's pastimes to show how it's just an expansion of Lord Chaitanya's mission. The ISKCON is a branch of the Chaitanya tree, which is reassuring. Another thing which is very reassuring actually, when you read about all the different personalities in the Chaitanya tree, there's three main branches. Well, there's Lord Chaitanya, he's the trunk, and the three main branches that come off Lord Chaitanya are Lord Nityananda, Sri Advaita Acharya, and Sri Gadadhar Pandit. And then from them there's all kinds of amazing personalities, and then it'll explain in the Gauragana Dipika that this personality is this personality in Krishna Lila. So when Lord Chaitanya came, he came like Krishna came with all his associates. Lord Chaitanya came as well. So, which is reassuring to know that there are personalities that have just preceded Srila Prabhupada, which were very, very exalted, and there's no reason to conclude that this won't continue on over the next 10,000 years. Special personalities will be coming down to help augment the initial introduction of Krishna consciousness by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Srila Prabhupada will quite often do that. He'll go from like Lord Chaitanya is delivering like this, and then Hare Krishna movement is doing like this, and this is another branch. So these are also the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya taking place, spreading Krishna consciousness, giving people the holy name. And innocent people that are just generally innocent, that they're in a very fortunate position in the sense that they don't make any Vaishnav aparad or any aparad really. Their chanting is namabas, because they like Ajamil, he wasn't chanting. He wasn't committing sin on the strength of chanting. he was calling his son Narayan, but it wasn't that he was calling his son Narayan and then thinking, now I can continue on with my sinful activity. So his chanting was Namabhas, which is the shadow of the name. So people get a lot of benefit when they're in a very innocent condition. And then the intermediate stage from going from innocent to becoming a pure devotee, and attaining the highest Goloka Vrindavan, then things become a little bit more strict. But for the general, just giving everyone benefit, then it's a very festive occasion. Anything we do in Krishna consciousness, because everything is so auspicious, people will become freed from apana samsitam gauram yan nama vivishagrinam. Living beings who are entangled in the complicated meshes of birth and death can be freed easily by even unconsciously chanting the holy name of Krishna. So, and Shiva Ramanuj qualifies unconscious. It's not that the person's, in a semi-stupefied state, but he's attentive when he's chanting, but he's just not conscious of he doesn't have the faith in the holy name. So that's what unconscious chanting means. So living beings can be freed immediately by just the chanting of the holy names. And it's very simple, really. And then for us, we've taken initiation. Some of us have taken initiation, so we're committed to the process. And taking initiation is a bit like running for the high jump, because if somebody's running for the high jump and they're not initiated, then as they're going along, they may look at the bar and think, actually that bar's far too high for anyone, let's be reasonable now. And they may lower the bar to about 18 inches. So then they don't have to really, if you're going to go over a bar 18 inches, the first thing you can do is throw the pole away, right? And you can just casually walk up. We were, Prabhupada and myself, one time we were trying to get into the golf, and we went all the way around, and we wasted quite a lot of time actually trying to get in for free. Should have just bought the tickets, but anyway, because we were giving up books at the time, so we thought we could. Anyway, there was a little low chain, and we just stepped over, and it was very easy, but it wasn't much of an endeavour. So we didn't need the pole after all. But when you commit, then you're saying that you're going to follow quite a high standard and aspire for a very high standard. So you'll need everything you've got. You'll need to give everything you've got. So the nice thing about making commitment is that you become empowered. Krishna decides, okay, well, if he's going to try his hardest, I'm going to step in and help. Although the material energy is very difficult to overcome, if you surrender to me, then he won't just help us, it'll actually be easy. So that goes into the easy column. That verse would go into the easy column, wouldn't it? If you just surrender, because sometimes you can be thinking, well, the surrender bit isn't easy. Once you do surrender, then it's easy to pole vault over. But the surrender is just that you decide you're going to give it everything you've got, so you run towards it with your pole, and then you spring up over, and then, lo and behold, you clear the bar. So it's not that we have to really do anything in Krishna consciousness other than commit to give everything that we've got. And if we do that, then whatever the shortfall is, Krishna promises he'll step in and make up the difference. And so that's what we're doing right now, is training so that we have good pole vaulting abilities for the final pole vault when we spring out of the material world. And we should never be discouraged, because discouragement doesn't lead to anything positive. And there is never, you'll not find any valid statements anywhere in the Shastra or spoken by Sadhu or Guru that justify being discouraged. It's an unwanted thing, so it has to be discarded. Discouragement also brings along with it moroseness, melancholy, negativity, self, what do they call it when you have a go at yourself all the time?
Self-abnegation.
Probably that as well, yeah. But you're putting yourself down all the time, so you're disempowering yourself. So the challenge is, can you remain encouraged? Can you remain happy? Can you remain positive? And to do that, I had an interesting analogy, because the mind is compared to the reins, and the chariot is compared to the body, and the senses are compared to the horses pulling the chariot. And the soul is sitting in the chariot, and he has his friend with him, the intelligence, who's directing the mind to control the senses. So what Arjuna did was he handed the reins to Krishna, and he said, okay, look, I'm compliant, I'll be a tool in your hands, use me as an instrument, but you please drive the chariot, you please direct me. I'll become compliant with your will. So he voluntarily did that. He still had his free will, but he gave that to Krishna, and he said, I surrender to you, so you take hold. So in the same way with our mind, if we hand our mind to Krishna, to the holy name, so that there's no other thought going on other than just the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra, then it means for the rest of the day, after we've been doing our chanting, it means the rest of the day Krishna's got the reins, and then he can direct us. Okay, don't think of that. Okay, think of this. So that's why we chant Hare Krishna. So, any questions or comments?
Yeah, well, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada just makes it a very simple formula, really. You know, just wherever devotees are chanting Hare Krishna, then the general public will be greatly benefited spiritually. But as you said, we don't necessarily know what that means, to be delivered or to be benefited spiritually. It may not have any material manifestation, you know, in the short term, and even in the long, it may be a very long time. It may even be beyond our lifetime until the manifestation is there. So, so how do we decide, or is it important that we have some measure, or that we have some idea?
Yeah, that's a nice question. So, Chaitanya was asking, for those that didn't catch it, that is there any discernible indication that from our chanting anything's happening? I suppose we can reflect back. The longer we've been in the Hare Krishna movement, I suppose the easier it is to reflect back and look. But I remember when I was at Bhaktivedanta, joined in 82 at Chaitanya College, Bhaktivedanta, and then there's a few things, there's a few upheavals, and I decided I'd like to come to Scotland in 1988. So in 88 I came up, and we had to go on the street in Glasgow. I remember I was in Argyle Street, and I was thinking, I wonder if I'm going to reach the end of the day with my life. And actually we went around some of the pubs, and I remember when I went in, it was like, you know, the old saloon guy, you know, and I was in there with my collecting can, and I walked in, and as the doors flapped shut behind me, the little guy in the counter stops. And the pub looks around, and would you like to help the Krishna you call flower, please? I was thinking, I'm never going to get out of this pub alive. I actually went down one pub and no one gave anything. You like help? I came up the pub. So it was a scary, it was quite a heavy kind of undercurrent of violence there. And just by going over and over again and carrying on the Garanga campaign as well. I mean, at one point the Garanga campaign was really in full swing. There was an ongoing battle actually with the Garanga campaign on one toilet seat. Somebody ripped it. Somebody put a Garanga sticker on the system and it had been ripped off. So then they put it on the toilet seat and it had been ripped off. And I thought, oh well, defeated, you know. And I lifted up the toilet seat and then it was underneath. It hadn't been ripped off, I hadn't noticed it. It might have been a lady that was ripping off and she hadn't lifted the toilet seat. Got around the winds again. So it was everywhere. It was in the airport toilets. It was just left a trail. End of the day, and there was people that were just doing it. They just were ignited by the Garanga campaign. So and it got to the point where it was like Prabhupada was saying the other day. You could hear people talking, and they would be talking about Garanga. You know? Garanga would come up. One lady was driving under a bridge and her son had died, and she just felt that if she called out Garanga and she went under the bridge, that wherever her son was, it would give him some benefit. So she used to call it out really loudly, so that holy name would. And then people were wondering what it was. One man told me it's a resin that was invented in 1947 that they use to glue the bridges together, special resin called Gauranga. It just showed you actually how much people speculate and just come up with their own ideas what they think of the self-appointed authority. You could get everybody convinced in the hope that he knew what he was talking about. You know? And the beauty of it was you didn't have to know what it meant. In fact, it was even better if you didn't know, because then people were more intrigued. It was almost like a letdown when people did find out what it was, because it was more mysterious to not know the meaning of it. You know, there was actually a clipping in a newspaper. Somebody sent me, one of my contacts in Aberdeen, and somehow or other the journalist had worked out what it was, that it was Vipalam Bhav, the deity of Radha and Krishna combined. He really got it spot on, you know, and he said maybe this is the Hare Krishna's a spirited attempt to free people from road rage. There you go, somewhere. So in that sense, you could see it was becoming discernible. People, you know, for Glasgow to become the vegan capital of Europe, it's just amazing. From the knife capital to the vegan capital, it's quite a shift, and that's in a very short time, really. And just the general environment now, when you're out there approaching people with Srila Prabhupada's books, and quite often at Christmas we'll go out with a lot of Bhagavad Gitas. And let the Bhagavad Gitas fly. And it's quite nice to, you know, at least 2 or 3 times a day, people are familiar with Bhagavad Gita. They were never, they didn't know what it was when I was first trying to give them out. I remember giving somebody Bhagavad Gita and he was looking. It was when I first joined, it was on the back ground. It was the first book I ever distributed. And I gave him this Bhagavad Gita and he's looking at it making all the funny language. He's looking at the title. And I could barely say the title myself. And he said, well, what's it about? And I was like, you know, it's the books, because I'd heard someone say, just say the books are like gold. So it's just like, it's like gold. What do you mean it's like gold? No, it's as valuable as gold. And he goes, okay, then give me the donation. But I didn't know what it was about, really. I remember trying to read the Srimad Bhagavatam, and it's a conversation inside a conversation inside a conversation. I was talking to him, and I couldn't work out how to say the names, so Dhritarashtra became Day, Shukadeva was S, Maharaj Parikshit was P. I didn't even bother trying to read the words. P is speaking to us, I got D. It was just like a real barrier there, you know. I remember when I joined as well, I used to wake up and think, oh my God, I've joined the Hare Krishnas, what am I doing? And it was just a culture thing there because of the Indian language, and it just wasn't kind of didn't fit in with the hoodlum Gopala at all. So I suppose you can, the best person to experiment upon is yourself, because when I initially was introduced to the idea of Krishna consciousness, I realized the only way I was really going to know is if I tried it myself. There's no way you can really know otherwise. Other people can say, oh yeah, it's really good, it's great, it's fantastic. But then if there is, obviously you want to do it anyway. And then to confirm it, you'd have to put yourself forward and think, okay, well I'll commit to this. And see, so. And then if you have some powerful experience within, I don't know how long you commit yourself for, you commit yourself, say, for 1 year, and you decide, I'll give it all I've got for a year, and I'll know either way by then. And then things change, because as you're practicing Krishna consciousness, sometimes you'll maybe bump into your old friends that you would have been exactly like if you hadn't taken up Krishna consciousness, and then you get some idea of the difference. It's there, between how you were and how you are. Anyone's expressed that. Come back in contact with some of your old friends. Alright, Tony, how's it going, lad? Are you a Hare Krishna now, eh? And you see, that's probably what I would have been saying as well to someone else if they'd joined in my group, So that's a good way to discern how change is taking place. And on the other hand, Rupa Goswami, he explains we have to be confident and enthusiastic. And sometimes we think that that's all we have to do. As long as I'm confident and enthusiastic, then everything should be okay, So I think I've been confident and enthusiastic for about 30 minutes now. What's happened, 31 minutes actually. I couldn't get more enthusiastic and confident if I tried. Okay, well that's fine. But now you're going to have to be patient. So just being patient isn't enough. I mean, stones are very patient, trees are very patient, but you have to be enthusiastic, confident, and patient. So sometimes you just have to wait, you have to bide your time, and for you to get a glimpse, an epiphany of how Lord Chaitanya's plan is unfolding. I mean, for Srila Prabhupada, it must have been so amazing to see how he just unfolded. There's a book called The Hare Krishna Explosion, and that's what it was like, It's like Srila Prabhupada was making this bomb his entire life, and suddenly he drops it, and it just explodes. It just goes everywhere, Everything. And it's just so many things start happening. If you read, what's it called? Following the Swami by Shamasundar. Shooting the rhino. Chasing the rhino, And it's not just like one or two miracles here and there, there's like just one after the other, all the different things. It was just phenomenal. And so now this is the kind of fallout from the explosion. And now the good thing is we're socially more stable than we were. So things are starting to settle down, and we're starting to find a level of Krishna consciousness that we can continually practice our entire life. And that's the main thing actually, is to achieve that, not to be like a shooting star and just go all out and then burn out. And encourage others also that whatever the level is that they're able to sustain, to keep that, because it's in the nature of practicing Krishna consciousness is that it's the dynamic is that it's ever increasing, so just by maintaining it's automatically increasing. You don't have to try to increase out with whatever the progressive speed is at the level of Krishna consciousness that you're practicing. If you're practicing it, then it will lead to more Krishna consciousness automatically.
Is that okay? That's passion.
Yeah.
This intermediate stage, this troublesome part of accepting a bit of strictness and struggling with the mind and offences and all these kind of things, and still trying at the same time.
Yeah.
Is that a good platform to help the innocent? Is it okay to be enthusiastic from that platform and reach out to people as a friend?
Yeah, when you're in the intermediary stage, you're trying to get out of all the anarthas and wanted things. You're stuck in that stage of anartha because now you have knowledge. So before you could get away with it because you didn't know any better. Now you know better. So now the pressure's on. And then when you commit also, the pressure's really on because now you're saying, I'm going to become the item. And so you have to start walking the talk. So, and at that stage, you're especially looking for mercy. And so, if you want to get mercy in hell, then the best way to do that is to share Krishna consciousness with others. And also others may be saying the same thing as you, and it just seems too difficult, it just seems impossible. And you can say, well, it is difficult, but it is actually possible to do it because you get a helping hand. So it's not just you on your own. But you're being helped by the Lord, and the more you become compliant with His will and what is wanted. Lord Chaitanya definitely wants to see everybody getting Krishna consciousness. So the more you surrender to that and become an assistant to others who are more empowered or more independent, then the very opposition comes. The other nice thing as well about sharing Krishna consciousness is that the mind tends to tell us that we don't know anything and we're making no progress at all practically, and you're worse than anybody else. But then when you go and you start sharing Krishna consciousness with others, you see, well, I do know a little bit more actually than the average person who doesn't really know really anything about. See, people are living in a very kind of shallow world, and everything's okay as long as everything stays shallow. But the world isn't shallow. Actually, the world is very profoundly deep, and you can only pretend it's shallow for so long. It's just a question of how long it takes you. And for most people, it's the onset of old age that starts to help them see that it's shallow, like people trying to take shelter of a river that's almost dry, and they jump on it, they just break their bones on the riverbed. It's compared in the light of the Bhagavad to fish in pools, rock pools, and as the sun reaches its zenith, the pools start to evaporate, and the fish try to just continue on with their daily duties, but every day that little pool of there is getting smaller and smaller, and shallower and shallower, and then eventually, so if we can show people that there is something deeper, then when things are starting to go wrong and they're starting to become aware that all this plastic stuff, all this tinsel, all this transitory sense gratification is not really going to satisfy the soul. You can polish the cage with a little bird saying, "Feed me, feed me, feed me." What's he saying? I think he's saying, "Feed me." Well, give the cage a polish. That's probably what it is. Give it a good polish. Feed me, feed me. Is he still? What's his problem? Well, put another perch in the cage. Give him a perch with velvet on it. Maybe that one. Feed me. And then eventually the parrot just falls on its back and dies because it's been starved to death. So the soul's inside the body, which is like a cage, and we're polishing the cage, thinking, well, everything should be okay, just keep it healthy, keep it fit. Put these cool clothes on, make it smell okay. What's the problem? And the soul inside is saying, feed me, feed me, feed me. what do you want? Do you want a new watch? Should we go and get a 4-wheel drive? How about what if we go and marry somebody else? Or get a different job? Feed me. Okay, look, we've got a different job, we've got a bigger car, you okay now? No, feed me. So we may be not as nourished as we could be, but we're certainly not completely starved. And we can share, and by sharing actually what we have that nourishes increases. That's the nature of spiritual life. It increases more. The more love and compassion you can give to others, the more love and compassion you will receive yourself. That's everyone's needs. You see, everyone's need is to experience this loving shelter, and also us too. That is our need, is to have loving relationships. And we get caught on the peripheral, superficial platform. But if you can dig a bit deeper, you'll see that everybody wants to be loved. Everybody wants to love. Everyone's looking for that.
Just a comment about, I was looking into the meaning of word deliver, and one of the meanings is to set oneself free, or set someone free from something. So I was thinking, what is Lord Chaitanya and the movement is, or the holy name specifically, is setting you free, because actually mantra, that's another meaning of mantra, is to free the mind. And so some of the symptoms of the holy name is, or effects the holy name gives, is freedom from attachment. Attachment is like imprisonment. Something is pulling you all the time, again and again and again, to the thing that you are attached. Another thing is bad qualities, anarthas and impurities in the heart. It sets you free from those. And also like a meaninglessness of existence. It gives you the purpose. Is that people live shallow life because their understanding of life is very shallow. It's just eat, sleep, and be merry. So it's and the soul is looking for really deep meaning. So it frees you from that depression and meaninglessness of life, and gives you like a deep purpose that you can unlimitedly go deeper and deeper. And another meaning of deliver is to save and rescue. So it's like an ocean of material existence is compared in the waves of the birth and death. So you are drowning in that ocean, and rescue means to pick you up from there and get you on the ship.
There's an interesting story that Sri Rama used to share a month or two ago, and it was when the anti-cult movement was really strong. There was one guy in particular, and he was really, he really had it in for the Hare Krishnas. He was really trying to, anyway, on this particular day, he was very stressed out, and then in the middle of it all, a Harinam started going past his office in London, and I think he was on the phone or something. He goes, and on top of it all, coming down the road now, it's the Hare Krishnas. And then he died of a heart attack. And that was the last thing he said. And he was actually against, he was actually really trying to slow down the whole. So it's hard to say how the auspiciousness is there, even if people are antagonistic. There's so much benefit. What to speak of devotees that are trying, like Gauranga was telling us a very nice story about Srila Prabhupada was reading the letter, and the room was full of devotees, but as he was reading the letter, the devotee started filing out of the room, because it was what this devotee was saying in the letter. He was saying, I've fallen down, and I've done this, and I've done that. And the devotee was saying, I don't really want to hear this. They were going out the room, And eventually it was only Srila Prabhupada and one of his disciples left, and he read it all, and then Srila Prabhupada said, just see how the soul is struggling for Krishna. So if you look at it like that, then it's glorious. Wherever, however you're trying, however difficult it is, no one's trying to make it any more difficult for themselves than it is. It's just the way the modes of nature and condition are, and the way their attachments are and their anarthas, but they're trying to the best of their ability. And Krishna sees that, he says, look, they're trying to love me, and it's very hard for them. So that steals Krishna's heart. That's why Krishna says, Abhichat. You don't have to try and worry about where everybody else is at, or deride them, or even yourself. You just try and just depend on me. So, of course, we can always try a little bit harder, but however hard you are trying, you could try a little less harder. So you can look at it like that as well.
Yeah, another thing regarding Javat Prabhu's question about how to see the effect, as we read here that Lord Chaitanya is delivering with the holy names, and the Krishna consciousness movement is delivering as well through chanting. So to the extent we take shelter of the holy names, to the extent we're going to feel the effect, because that's the Yuga Dharma. So there is many other things we can do, but to the degree we're actually taking shelter of the holy name, to that degree we'll experience the effect of that is taking place in our lives and around us.
Yes, for ourselves is one, and then the other is to see how it's affecting everybody else. It may not be so easy to see. Of course, you can become expert at seeing how it is affecting people. Because people may not be aware. You may be more aware than they are. They may not be consciously aware of what's going on. But you may see. That's another good thing about sharing Krishna consciousness. Is if you develop a long-standing relationship with people, then you can start to see how they're changing. You can see that they're making progress. If you just see somebody once and then never see them again, it's harder. So that's why it's good to cultivate people. And if the people you're cultivating are saying, "Wow, this is amazing," 10 years ago I was only chanting 4 hours, now I'm chanting 60. By you speaking to me, I become so encouraged. So then you see, okay, this is good, I can do something positive. And Srila Prabhupada says something is better than nothing. So don't give up something for nothing. Something is better than nothing. Never think, well, it's hardly worth it. It's always better than nothing. Something is always better, whatever it is. It's always better than nothing. Is just nothing. Something can grow to something very special. So something is better than nothing. And we can all do something. But don't give up something for nothing. I'm just going to throw the towel in. It's just a waste of time. You can do something. You can always do something. And something else needs to be more as well. So anyway, that's a nice prayer to make is to how can we see? I mean, Srila Prabhupada could see not only that there was some immediate explosion, but he was also looking, well, how are we going to maintain this after I've gone? There has to be a GBC, there has to be many initiating spiritual masters. This has to take place for it to happen. We have to incorporate each other nicely. We have to develop very deep, loving relationships with each other. And the challenge is, instead of when you diagnose somebody and then you become critical of them, the challenge is, can you go deeper and appreciate the person? Can you go deeper than some superficial diagnosis and see the person on a deeper level? Because that's actually what we all need to do. Because that's what love is based upon. It's not based upon finding faults, it's based upon finding things to appreciate in the person. And being grateful for the person's association. Thanking Krishna for giving the devotees that we're with to us as our family. And it's funny because when I joined, I thought, oh, I'm leaving my family, and then I went back to see my family at Christmas. And my family were in high spirits on sherry and cheap lager, and they had a brawl in the living room, and I was sitting there stone cold sober, and I was thinking, okay, so I've got Hare Krishnas. I'd only been Hare Krishna for maybe a year at that time, thinking that's one family, and I've got this one here. So when you're serving with people for a long time, then the relationships actually go very deep, deeper than just being with. Because with family members, you don't really get to choose, do you? You just get plunked with a particular random group of living entities. One's your uncle, one's your brother, one's your son. Whereas with devotees, it's been chosen by Krishna for you to associate with. So that's the challenge, isn't it? Can you learn to love everybody that Krishna's part of your environment? And appreciate them. And appreciate that they are making advancement, they are progressing towards Krishna. Jai. Is Guru in the key?
Jai.
Shilabhava ki?
Jai.
Haribol.
His Grace Adhoksaja Krishna Prabhu ki. Jai.
Guru in the key.
Jai.
Hare Krishna family ki.
Jai ho.